This is Gemara in Kiddushin, Daf Yomi, Ches, and all the learning for this month. The month of Elul has been generously sponsored as an incredible Schos Aliyas Neshama for Esther Rezel Basar Ameir B'Siyat D'Shemaya. The learning of the entire Chabura should bring the Neshama of Esther Rezel Basar Malka to higher in place in Gan Eden Shel Maila. We pick it up on Yud Zayin and Beis, 4 lines from the bottom. We're in the middle of multiple dinim statements of Rava. Says the Gemara, 4 lines from the bottom. Akum es hager, v'ger es hager, the halacha of a guy inheriting his father who was a ger, or a ger who inheriting his father who was a ger. Einai, they do not inherit loi midivrei Torah, v'loi midivrei seifrim. Neither on a deraisa nor on a derabanan level, d'tanan, as you learned in a Mishnah. Loivem mois min ager, if someone borrows money from a ger, shenisgairu banav imai, that his children were megayer together with him, lo yachzer labanav, he is not able to return the halva, return the money that he owes to the children. But but if he does indeed return to the children, then the halacha is the Chazal are not happy with him. Now again, of course, the case of here is referring to where the malveh, the father, is nifter, and now the question is he wants to pay back the alva, but there's no one to pay to. So does he pay to the yarshim? So the question is, the malveh, the lender, was a ger. His children were megaya with him. Says the Braisa, lo yachzer labanav. But if you do it, Chazal are not happy. Asks the Gemara of Tanya. But we learned in our Braisa, ruach hacham eichimenu. A different Braisa says you don't have to return it. But if you do, the Chazal were happy with you. Answers the Gemara, a fundamental difference between the Braisas. The impregnation and the birth of the children were shalai b'kedusha, meaning the children were born as regular gayim, and then the father and they were megayer. V'kan, and in the other cases sheirasa shalai b'kedusha, that the impregnation was when the parent was a guy, but then they were megayer v'leidasai b'kedusha, and the child was born in Kedusha. In the case where the child was born in Kedusha, then you don't have to pay back the child, but if you do, Ruach Chachamim are indeed Noichei Menu, the Chachamim are happy with you. And we pick it up on Yudches Amid Aleph, says the Gemara, delving a little bit deeper into the din of Rava, or more particularly, who argues with one of the dinim of Rava. Rav Chia bar Ravin Amar Rav Yechanan, says Rav Chia bar Ravin in the name of Rav Yechanan, Akum Yairish es Aviv Devar Torah. A guy does indeed inherit his father midaraisa dersev, and this, the din is the same as Rava. The makar is different. Dersev, as the pasuk says, Kirusha leIsav Nosati is Har Seir. The Yerusha to Esav I've given Har Seir. And therefore we see, even though he was not Jewish, we still see that he's inheriting his father. Asks the Gemara of Dilma Yisrael Mumar Shiny. Esav was theoretically or essentially a Yid. He just was a mummer, he went off the derech. So says the Gemara, Elameacha, different source, Kiblein Loit, Nasati is S.R. Yerusha, that the children of Loit are given over as, is given as the Yerusha to the children of Lot. So ask the Gemara of Rav Chia bar Ravin, my time Amar Karava. So where does the machlekes come from? Why does Rav Chia bar Ravin not learn from the pasuk of Rava? Says Rav Chia bar Ravin, Miksev v'chishev im koineu. Does the pasuk say that you should calculate with your creator v'loyim yarshei ganeu? With your purchaser, and now with the Yarshe Geneu, he doesn't hold of such a Joshua. The Rava, my time Malamer Rav Chia, and why doesn't Rava hold of Rav Chia bar Ravin, Mishum Kavayde Davram Shaini, then maybe that case was different out of the honor, out of the kavod to Avraham Avinu. And that really wraps up the Gemara from yesterday, and now Tanu Rabbanan, we begin a new Gemara. We're on Yud Ches Amud Aleph, approximately 10 lines down at the 2 dots. Tanu Rabbanan teaches the Brisa Yesh Be'ivri, and we're going to quote a Brisa, and then we will slowly dissect the Brisa piece by piece. Says the Brisa Yesh Be'ivri Shein Be'ivriya. There are halachas that apply to an Eved Ivri, a Jewish slave, that don't apply to an Eved Amma Ivriya, to a girl Jewish slave. The Yesh Be'ivriya Shein Be'ivri, and there are halachas that apply to the girl and not to the boy. Explains the Brisa. Yesh Be'ivri Shu Yaitze B'Shanim, an Eved Ivri leaves after 6 years, Uba Yovel, and on year 50, Uba Misas Adain, and the death of the master. Masha Ein Gein Be'ivriya, she does not leave at these intervals. V'yesh be'ivriya, and there's a din of ivriya that doesn't apply to the ivri. Shei ivriya yaitze b'simanim, and ve'inonim kares v'nishes, she cannot be repeatedly sold. U'maftin aisab al karchen, she could be redeemed against her will. Masha ein kein be'ivri, which does not apply by an eved ivri. So numerous dinim, says the Gemara, contrasting an eved ivri and an amma ivriya. Amar, says the Gemara, let's delve into this halacha. Amar, let's take the first halacha over here. Yesh be'ivri, she'ein be'ivriya. That there is by an ivri that does not apply to an ivriya, by an amma ivriya. Ask the Gemara, which clearly implies that the amma ivriya does not go out b'shanim, does not go out of year 6. For your minhu, I'll ask you a question from our original Mishnah. What did the Mishnah teach us? Yiseira lav amma ivriya shekanatza b'simanim. And amma ivriya's yiseira is additionally she leaves b'simanim, implying that she also leaves b'shanim, etc. Amar Rav Sheishes, so says Rav Sheishes, you know the case that we are referring to, kigoyin sheyada, that this amma ivriya was married off through yud. Yud is the process in which the master could marry off the Amma Ivriya, marry the Amma Ivriya, and whether he has to pay her Kesef Kiddushin is a discussion which we're going to get to today. Says the Gemara, 1 second, Yiyadab Shita, if the master married this Amma Ivriya, of course she doesn't leave Bishanim. Kitabaya, she was married, now she needs a get. Explains the Gemara, no, maybe even though he married her, she doesn't lose any halachais. She can indeed leave Vishanim Kamashalan, and that she does not leave Vishanim. Iyachi asked the Gemara, why would she leave Visimanim? So Hachi Kamar explains the Gemara, if she did not do Yid, then Yaitza Af Bisimanim. And that's really how we answer the question, that we see that she's not only leaving Bisimanim, but she's also going to leave Be-Shanim. And now we quote the second din of the Brisa, that says the Brisa Ve'inonim Kares V'Nishnis, that Amma Ivriya cannot be repeatedly sold. Says the Gemara, Michla, what's the obvious implication? That Ivri could yes be Nimkar V'Nishna, could yes be repeatedly sold. Ve'hatanya, ask the Gemara, but we learned in our Brisa B'Gnei Vasai, says the Brisa that what happens if someone steals something and he does not have enough money to pay back that which he stole, what happens is he's sold into slavery to pay back for his Geneva. So we darshan B'Gnei Vasai, he's sold into slavery for stealing, but he's not sold to pay kefel. Halacha, you have to pay double in certain scenarios. B'Gnei Vasai, he's sold for stealing, not for being found to be an Eid Zaymimin. B'Gnei Vasai, he's sold for stealing. Once he is sold one time, you're not allowed to sell him a second time. So ask the Gemara that seemingly we see from this Brisa that even an Eved Ivri cannot be repeatedly sold. The latter Brisa that says he can't be sold multiple times is only for one Geneva. But when we said he could be sold multiple times, that is when it's multiple Genevas. Amr le Abaye asked Abaye and Rava 1 second. B'gnei vasai tuvai mashma. The pasuk that says b'gnei vasai seems to indicate multiple gnevas. So Elam or Abaya has a different way of answering the kasha. Loi kasha. Kan ba'adam echad, kan b'shnei b'nei adam. One is talking about one person. The latter Bryce is talking about where he stole from one person, and then the halacha is he can only be sold once. Kan b'shnei adam, if he stole from two people, then he can be sold more than once. Tanu ra banan. Let's delve a little bit deeper into these halachas of being sold for Geneva. Geneva elef v'shava chamesh me'ois nimkar. The halachas he sold v'chayzer v'nimkar. Geneva chamesh me'ois v'shava elef einoi nimkar klal. Rav Eliezer oimer amaya Geneva kineged mimkar nimkar v'imlav einoi nimkar. So says the Braisa, the Tanakama holds, if you could be sold for less but not for more, if you sold by less because you could be sold 2 times, not for more. Rav Eliezer says no, you can only be sold for the equal amount. Amar Rava comments the Gemara Bahazach Nayu. Rav Eliezer the Rabbanan. Rav Eliezer went over the Rabbanan with the following: Demai Shana Geneva Chamish Me'os Shava Elef. Deinai nimkar, why not? Nimkar kulo amar rachmana v'loy chetz yoi. Hachanami nimkar b'gnevasa rachmana v'loy nimkar b'chatzi gnevasa. So Rava proves that Rav Eliezer is indeed correct. And we continue with the next part of the Braisa, that in Amma Evriya, one of the contrasts, one of the differences between the Amma Evriya and the Evet Ivri was what? That the Amma Evriya is maftin Oisa Bal Karcha, we redeem her against her will. Savar Rava Lemim. Rava comes along and says, against whose will? Bal Karcha de Adain, that we redeem her against the will of the master. Amalei Abaye Asabayan Rava Mainihu Asabaye. What is this halacha? Maybe you're going to tell me that the halacha is that when you redeem this Amma Evriya, you don't actually have to give money, but rather you give a shtar. You could give a document saying, I owe you, and the master could be forced to accept this I owe you and free the Amma Evriya. But says the Gemara, why? Amai. And the way the Rashi here explains is that the master is holding a marganisa, he's holding a pearl, meaning he has real bailis. He's bailis aguf, as we've seen in previous shirim on this Amma Evriya. So a mere piece of paper is going to remove that bailus. Ella Amar Abaye, about 12 lines at the bottom. The first one line is Abaye. Rather, Abaye comes along and explains, Bal Karchai de'av misham gam mishpacha. We force the father to allow her to be redeemed in order to remove the blemish, the bad name for the mishpacha. Says Gemara, wait, if the reason why we force the father to allow his daughter to be redeemed is in order to better the name of the mishpacha, why don't we do the same thing? Ask the Gemara by the Eved Ivri. Answers the Gemara, you know why? Because an Evet Ivri can just go and sell himself. So if we go and redeem him, he's just going to sell himself again. Ask the Gemara, what do you mean? The same thing over here, the father can go and resell her. Answers the Gemara, this is where we see the halacha that an Amma Evriya cannot be repeatedly sold. Umani, and who is the Tana of this Braisa that the Amma Evriya cannot be repeatedly sold? Rabbi Shimon, it's Rabbi Shimon, the Tanya, we learned in a Braisa. A person could sell his daughter into marriage multiple times. He could sell her into servitude multiple times. He can marry her off after she was a slave. But not, he cannot sell her to slavery after she was married. Rabbi Shimon Oimer, Kishem shein adam meicher zbita l'shivcha zachar ishos, kachin adam meicher zbita l'shivcha zachar shivchos. That's the sheet of Rav Shimon, and that is whom we're going to be going like. And comments the Gemara, this machlekes Rav Shimon and the Tanakama is indeed uplukta dani tanai is the machlekes of the following tanoim. Titania, we learned in a brisa, says the Torah bibigdai ba, says the Torah he can't sell her bibigdai ba. And we darshan this pasuk as we turn over to Yerchesem Ebeis that given Shabire Shalisa Yaleh to see exactly what this means. But once the Adain, the master, spreads his towels over her, Shav ein Rashay Lemachra, the father can no longer sell her. Divrei Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Lazar Mer bibigdai ba. And he learns out, says Rabbi Eliezer, once the father has betrayed her by selling her to be an Eved, Shavin Rashi L'Machra, he cannot sell her afterwards. Explains the Gemara, B'maika Mifligi, what is this machlekes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Eliezer? So explains the Gemara, B'maika Mifligi, Rabbi Eliezer Savar, Yesh Eim LeMisayres, Rabbi Akiva Savar, Yesh Eim LeMikra, Rav Shimon Savar, Yesh Eim LeMikra, UleMisayres. And that's going to be the three-way machlekes over here, and this centers around how do you read the pasuk bebigdei ba or bebagdei ba, and to explain that yesh eim lemesayres means we go by the way that it is written, yesh eim lemikra means we go by the way that it is read, and yesh eim lemikra lemesayres means we take both into account, and this has to do with whether you read it bebigdei with the yod or bebagdei. Continues the Gemara, Ba'i Rabba bar Avua, 6 lines down. Yerchesem Ebeis asks Rabba bar Avua, really going backwards on that which we saw in Amud Aleph, this concept of Yiyod, this concept that the master can marry himself to the Amma Ivriya. Asks Rabba bar Avua, Yiyod Nisuin Oiseh, Oy Erusin Oiseh. What does a Yiyod do? Is it an act of Erusin or is it an act of Nisuin? Nafka Mina, what's the difference? Says the Gemara. We've seen this extensively in the Gemara in Gittin, that the only time you inherit the wife, you're allowed to become Tamei if you're a Kayin, or you can annul her vows, is only after Nisuin, only after the marriage is consummated. So asks the Gemara, what is Yiyud? This concept of Yiyud, that the master is allowed to marry the Amma Ivriya. Ask the Gemara, is that a marriage of Erusin or is that a marriage of Nisuin? So Tashema comes along the Gemara to prove. Bebigdai ba, says the Pasuk Shabir Jali Zola, once he spreads her towels over her, the price we caught on top of the Amud. Shavein Arashai Lemachra. Once the master spreads his towels over her, the father can no longer sell her. So explains the Gemara. Zabune udloi ma'azbin la. Seemingly this means that the father can't sell her. But seemingly the father does have the right to do yiyod for her. So now the Gemara proves from here. He said, you're going to tell me that yiyod does nisuin. Once she does nisuin to the master, the father has no rights in her at all. So it can't be that the yiyod was nisuin. So rather, what must be going on over here? That Erusin Oiseh, that is the Raya. The Yiyod only does Erusin. Says the Gemara, no Raya, because who told you this price is referring to Yiyod at all? Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, Acha b'Kiddushin the Alma Kai. It's about regular Kiddushin. V'achi Kamar, this is what the price is teaching us. Kivan she'masar aviyah lemisha deschayev b'she'era ksusa ve'oinasa. Once the father gives her over to a person that is obligated to give her she'er ksusa einasa, shavein yachal amachra, then he cannot sell her anymore. And meaning the price is referring to regular Kiddushin, not Yiyod, and therefore we don't have any Raya from this brisa. And therefore the Gemara continues, we're about 15 lines to the bottom, Tashema, first word on line is Ein. Says the brisa, Ein ma'ikra likrayvim. We cannot sell, a father cannot sell his daughter to relatives who are not able to marry her. Mishum Rav Eliezer Oimru, Machru likrayvim. They could sell her. He could sell her even to relatives. Vishavin, both the Tanakam and Rav Eliezer agreed. Shamachra almana l'kayin gadol gushav chalutza l'kayin edyet. Says the Gemara, what is this case of the almana, the kohen gadol, grusha chus, kohen yadid? Ay almana yechidami. What's the case that the girl is considered the status of an almana, which means her husband died? If she went and got married herself with Kiddushin, almana karila, and then the husband dies, do we consider her an almana? The fact that a ketana accepts Kiddushin is nothing, so she's not in anything. The elamah must be the kidshaviyah, that the father married her off and took Kiddushin. So what does it mean that he could sell her afterwards? You can't sell her as a slave after you married her off. You know what the Brisa is talking about when it said, Ein Meichel Krivim, or Yes Meichel Krivim, B'Kedusha Yiyud, V'Alibud Rav Yossi, Rav Yehuda. We're going in the world of Yiyud, we're going in with the case where the master is marrying this Amar of Riyah, according to the opinion of Yossi, Rav Yehuda, the Amar, that he says, the original money, the money that the master paid to purchase this Amar of Riyah, does not act as the money for Kiddushin, and therefore, if he wants to marry her, he's going to have to give her new Kiddushay Kesef. So now, says the Gemara, if you're going to tell me that Yid is a process of Nisuin, then the Kasha is, father should have no Rishostar. Elamai, Erisin, says the Gemara, 1 second. But what did the Brisa say? V'shavin shemachra, that he sells her. But if she already had Kiddushin, she already had Yod, how can he sell her afterwards? Elamai is like lemeimar, 5 lines on the bottom. What do you have to say? Lemeimar shiny erisin. Didam erisin davio. You're going to have to answer, says the Gemara, that if erisin of a Yod is different than the regular sin erisin. So if the Gemara says if that's true, then if you look at him Nisuin Aisa, let's say Yod does Nisuin, and we'll say the same answer. Shiny Nisuin in Dida, Menisuin Dia Via. We conclude with the Gemara says nothing, dude. Hi, Mai. Bishlam Eris and Meris and Shiny. I can understand that you could differentiate between the Erisin, then the regular Erisin that her father accepts. Elanisuin, Minisuin, me Shiny. Can you actually make a difference? There's no difference. Nisuin is Nisuin. And we conclude that says the Gemara that what is the case? So Mukimla Rav Eliezer, Diamar, Shivcha Zachar Shivchas, who Delamatzi Mazunla, Aval Shivcha Zachar Ishos, then Matzi Mazunla, and that's how we'll explain the Brisa according to Rav Eliezer. We'll stop over here, we'll pick it up from over here on Daf Yomi the next year, B'siyata Dishmaya.